Johnny Curry and his twin brother, Leonard, were born in 1959. Their younger brother, Rudell, was born a year later. They grew up in a lower middle class, predominantly African American East Side neighborhood, about 7 miles from downtown Detroit. By all accounts, Johnny was the more reserved and cerebral of the twins, while Leo, as Leonard was known, was a flashy extrovert. The twins began their drug careers in the late 1970s, selling marijuana. The brothers' father, Sam Curry, reportedly provided the seed money for the business in 1978. After moving up to high-volume dealing, they switched from marijuana to heroin and finally, powdered cocaine and crack in the 1980s. They built and maintained a collection of 24 dope houses on the east side of Detroit offering marijuana, heroin, crack cocaine, and stored significant amounts of cash at Hill's Marathon Station Auto Garage, located at East Warren in Detroit. One of the twins would routinely collect the cash from Hill's Auto Garage. The Curry's cocaine was supplied primarily by Sam Curry and Detroit local, Art Derrick. Derrick owned a fleet of 4 planes, 2 of which he purchased from the Rolling Stones, and then used to fly product in from Miami, netting $100,000 profit per day at his peak. Derrick, who died in 2005, lived in a palatial home with a marble-floored basement and a pool bearing his initials on the bottom. Each of the twins drove burgundy-colored Ford Broncos with Eddie Bauer leather interiors. Even Rudell drove a matching Bronco, except his was blue. Johnny also drove a customized Berliner. The entire organization would sometimes drive to the city's Belle Isle Park, located on the Detroit River, on warm days. The twins made a habit of commandeering a local roller skating rink, Royal Skateland, at night and essentially throwing impromptu parties. They frequented more mature parties at the Lady Nightclub. Another favorite hangout was Stokes, an establishment with strippers and topless waitresses. Johnny dated, and later married, Kathy Jermaine Volsan, the niece of then-Mayor Coleman Young. Kathy's father, Willie Clyde Volsan Jr., who happened to be married to Mayor Young's sister, Juanita Clark, was a drug kingpin throughout the 1970s and 80s. After a career of illegal gambling, Volsan trafficked in heroin before moving on to cocaine. Before dating Johnny, Kathy had been involved with Detroit Pistons star Vinnie the Microwave Johnson. When Kathy became pregnant with Johnny's child, her baby shower was held at the Menujan Mansion, the mayor's official residence. Young, Detroit's first African-American mayor, amassed considerable power during his 5 terms in office. Kathy, in turn, used her familial relationship to her uncle to gain access to information regarding police investigations involving herself and those in her circle, including the Currys. By 1984, the FBI and Detroit police had launched an investigation into the Curry organization. Federal agents even broke into Johnny's house and planted listening devices. By that time, Rudell had started hanging out with neighborhood teenager, Richard Ware-Shee. They frequently rode around in Rudell's Ford Bronco, picking up girls. They also frequently spent time at Royal Skateland, enjoying Rudell's older brothers' get-togethers. Unbeknownst to the Currys, at 14 years old, Ware-Shee was recruited by the FBI, who were conducting an investigation of the brothers, precisely because of his familiarity with them. Johnny's marriage to Kathy Volsan in 1985 prompted Mayor Young to provide her with a security detail, comprised of Detroit police officers, headed by Sergeant James Harris. Johnny sometimes took Ware-Shee along to watch the Detroit Tigers play. He even accompanied the Currys to the World Middleweight Championship boxing bout between undisputed champion Marvin Hagler and Detroit native Thomas Hearns, held on April 15, 1985 in Las Vegas, Nevada. During a shooting targeting the northwest Detroit home of Leon Lucas on April 29, his 13-year-old nephew Damian Lucas was inadvertently killed by 2 Curry triggermen after being shot in the chest. Damian and his younger brother, Frankie, both orphans since their mother's death the year before, lived with Leon. Lucas, a heroin dealer, along with his cousin, Robert Walton, both Curry associates, had been given the responsibility of arranging the itinerary for the Currys' Vegas trip, but were unable to purchase tickets to the fight ahead of time. The two already owed the Currys cash and heroin, seized during a police raid. The ticket fiasco only exacerbated the situation. The shooting was intended as a message to Lucas, who wasn't home at the time. According to the FBI, Leo Curry ordered associate Wyman Jenkins to send Sidney Goodwin and Walter Owens, who they furnished with Mac 10 and Mac 11 machine pistols to do the job. A barrage of at least 10 shots entered the house. Following the shooting, Leon Lucas gave an interview in which he asserted that Leo and Jenkins had called him that morning, threatening to carry out the very shooting that took place. Another man unrelated to the Curry organization, Larkias Davis, was charged with the killing. However, FBI agent Herman Groman informed the judge and attorneys involved in the case that wiretap evidence indicated that Davis was not involved and the charges were dropped. Following Damien's killing, Johnny reportedly held an organization meeting in the basement of his home, during which he offered to pay those who keep quiet about the matter, if questioned by police. According to FBI agent Herbert Groman, Curry called Sergeant Harris and Commander Gilbert Hill of the Detroit Police Department the morning following the shooting. On September 19, Curry associate Lamont Davis assaulted an unidentified man who failed to pay a drug debt owed to the organization. Davis set him on fire after administering a beating. That same day, Curry enforcer Lee Potts, acting on orders from Johnny, allegedly killed Eric Dunston to settle a turf dispute. The Currys are estimated to have made approximately $200 million by 1987. On April 2, 1987, the Curry brothers, their father, Lamont Davis, and Alan Hill Sr., were indicted on multiple drug charges, including operating a continuing criminal enterprise, following a joint investigation by the FBI, Detroit Police, and the IRS. Johnny, Sam, Rudell, and Hill were formally charged in federal court that same day, while Leo, Jenkins, and Davis remained at large. Eventually, 20 members of the Curry organization would be indicted. On September 8, 1987, Johnny and Leo, represented by attorney Steve Fishman, accepted a deal and pleaded guilty to operating a continuing criminal enterprise and tax evasion. Ultimately, the other 18 defendants entered guilty pleas as well. On January 13, U.S. District Court Judge Richard Sir Heinrich sentenced Johnny and Leo to 20 years without the possibility of parole and fined them $250,000. Rudell pleaded guilty to narcotics conspiracy charges and was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison on February 18. Jenkins was eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison. In 1992, Kathy Volsan Curry testified that Commander Hill had informed Johnny that there was a wiretap on his telephone. Following his convictions, Johnny admitted to FBI agents that he, accompanied by Kathy, personally paid then homicide inspector Hill $10,000 in his office to redirect the investigation into Damien Lucas' murder, away from his organization. When Curry and Hill spoke the morning after the murder, Hill allegedly requested that he and Kathy meet with him in his office. Sergeant Harris, who reported to Hill, picked the two up and drove them to police headquarters. Hill, who died in February of 2016, appeared as Inspector Todd in the Beverly Hills Cop film trilogy, and was later elected president of Detroit City Council in 1989. Johnny and Leo served 11 years of their sentence in a federal facility located in Texarkana, Texas, before being released in 1999.